NASA has a biological problem, and it's not aliens. At least, not the way you imagine them. 400 kilometers above your head on the International Space Station, something is evolving faster than science predicted. The latest reports from this January 2026 confirm that the bacteria that went up with the astronauts are no longer the same as those on Earth. They've transformed. They've mutated. The Enterobacter bugandensis strain hasn't just become drug-resistant. It's learned to protect other bacteria in the vacuum. Space isn't killing the microbes. It's training them. If we plan to travel to Mars, our worst enemy won't be radiation. It'll be what we carry inside our own suits. When humans look up at the International Space Station, they see a triumph of engineering, a monument of metal and solar panels that defies gravity and perpetual darkness. But if we adjust the lens of our analysis and observe this phenomenon from a purely biological and forensic perspective, the structure ceases to be a laboratory and becomes something far more disturbing. A hermetically sealed petri dish, isolated and subjected to evolutionary pressure, unprecedented in the history of organic life. We've made the anthropocentric mistake of believing that by leaving the atmosphere, we leave nature behind, that steel and titanium separate us from biology. But the reality that the data from this 2026 is throwing in our faces is that we never travel alone. We are ecosystems with legs, permeable containers of trillions of microorganisms that, just like us, suddenly find themselves in an environment they weren't designed for. And faced with the stress of the vacuum, life has only two options: go extinct or change radically. What we're witnessing right now in the ISS modules is an experiment in accelerated evolution in real time, where the rules of the Darwinian game that have governed the Earth's surface for 3 billion years are being rewritten. Today's subject of analysis is not the astronaut, but their invisible passengers, specifically an organism that has demonstrated an adaptive capacity bordering on intelligent, Enterobacter bugandensis. On Earth, this bacterium is a common opportunist, just another hospital dweller that only causes problems when the immune system fails. But in space, subjected to microgravity and constant cosmic radiation, it has ceased being a simple germ and has become an elite survivor. Genomic studies conducted on the 13 strains recently isolated on the station reveal something equally fascinating and terrifying. These bacteria are genetically and functionally distinct from their terrestrial sisters. This isn't simply a random mutation. It's a calculated response to environmental stress. Let's imagine for a moment the existence of a cell in orbit. Without gravity pulling fluids downward, nutrients don't settle, waste doesn't drift away. The bacterium floats in a static limbo, constantly bombarded by high-energy particles that break its DNA. To survive, Enterobacter has had to armor itself, thickening its cell walls and activating genes that remain dormant on Earth, developing pumping systems known as efflux pumps that actively expel antibiotics and toxins from its organism with lethal efficiency. But the finding that has shaken the scientific community in these first weeks of 2026, and that has been published in journals like PLOS Biology, goes beyond individual resistance, because it suggests an almost social behavior among these microorganisms. It has been observed that Enterobacter in space not only protects itself, but cooperates, using quorum-sensing mechanisms to coordinate with other bacterial species, helping them survive and forming biofilms, those viscous, resistant layers that adhere to instrument panels and life support systems, creating microscopic fortresses impenetrable to conventional disinfectants. This is where the anthropological analysis becomes critical. Humans have accidentally created a selective environment that favors the most aggressive and resilient organisms. By attempting to sterilize the environment, we're eliminating the weak and giving free rein to those with the genetic tools to resist, creating an apocalypse gym where only the strongest reproduce. And if this weren't enough cause for alarm, we must introduce a new actor into this dramatic play: bacteriophages, viruses that prey on bacteria. Recent scientific literature indicates that the predator-prey dynamic has also been altered in microgravity. On Earth, this microscopic war maintains balance, but in space, the chaos of fluid physics alters the frequency of encounters, forcing both virus and bacterium to develop new attack and defense strategies. A biological arms race occurring in silence while the astronauts sleep. Why is this relevant to the future of the human species? Because we're on the eve of becoming a multi-planetary species. Mars missions, lasting 9 months or more, won't have the option of emergency medical evacuation or constant resupply. In a spacecraft bound for the Red Planet, the crew will be locked in with their own mutating microbiome. If one of these bacteria, trained in the harshness of low orbit and strengthened by years of artificial natural selection, decides to infect a human whose immune system is already depressed by space travel, the antibiotics we carry in our medical kit could be as useless as sugar water. Space medicine faces the paradox that our own biological companions are becoming alien before our eyes, diverging from their original lineage to adapt to an environment we invaded. This leads us to a profound reflection on the nature of exploration. We've always feared finding hostile life on other planets, imagining tentacled monsters or warrior civilizations. But the supreme irony is that the most immediate biological threat doesn't come from outside, but from within. It's terrestrial life that, freed from the chains of gravity, shows its wildest and most indomitable potential. What we're seeing on the ISS is proof that life is plastic, malleable, and obstinate. The bacterium doesn't know it's in space. It only knows the environment is hostile and responds with the only tool it possesses: evolution. From a forensic perspective, we could say that the space station is not just a human habitat, but an incubator for new species. We're exporting terrestrial life to the cosmos, but in the process, we're irreversibly changing it. Perhaps within a few decades, when we analyze the biological sediments of the first Martian colonies, we won't find traces of native life, but rather the descendants of that Enterobacter that learned to survive on the ISS, a new branch of the tree of life, born not in a primordial ocean, but in the air filters of a space station built by curious primates. This is the true challenge of the Anthropological Archive of the future, understanding that we cannot colonize space without carrying with us the seed of biological chaos, and that to survive out there, we'll have to sign a truce with our own microbes, or accept that in the immensity of the vacuum, they possess an adaptive capacity that we, with all our technology and arrogance, are only beginning to comprehend. The lesson that Enterobacter bugandensis teaches us is one of cosmic humility. We can build rockets, we can bend steel and filter water, but we cannot stop the engine of evolution, which keeps turning, relentless, even in zero gravity, reminding us that before being astronauts, engineers, or explorers, we are, above all, a collection of cells struggling not to perish in a universe that tends toward entropy.